Hello. Hi, Aparna, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so before we start off, let's just introduce ourselves. I assume it's your first problem solving session that you're joining live, right?
Yeah, yeah, I.
Okay, right. So, yeah, I am Apeksha Gautam and I am from IDC School of Design, IIT Bombay, and I'm doing my PhD here. So, understanding ethnography is actually a product of IDC. So the professor basically, Professor Nina Sabnani was from IDC. So she had started this course. So here we actually, like you might have gone through the like three or four, fourth week has been updated like yesterday. So if you've gone through all these weeks, you might have got some gist of what ethnography is. So like did you attend or like did you just go through any of the problem solving sessions yet?
No, not yet.
Okay, okay, no worries. So how has the course been till now, like from week 1 to week 4? How do you feel? How is it going?
Yeah, it is actually very amazing. So, I am Aparna. I am from Triple IT Jabalpur. I am doing my bachelor's in design,
Oh,
and my
okay,
interest area lies in design research and social design.
okay.
So, like even from my like end of first year and second year, I was very much like intrigued about ethnography. So
Mm-hmm.
initially, I searched about the projects, and a few of the IDC projects were up on some website, I guess. So I just
Okay.
went through them, and there were like studies about few places by the students. So that was very nice, and it was very similar to what I have always wanted to do. So yeah, the
Oh.
course has been very great till now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And have you like anytime visited IDC anytime before?
No, I haven't.
Okay, maybe we will see you someday at IDC. It'll be great to
Yeah,
have you there, and we might have some like off-screen interaction sometime together.
yeah.
Okay, so have you like found anything difficult that you did not understand while you were going through the course, while you were going through the lectures, while you were going through the readings, or whatever you have been accessing the course? So, did you find any problems, or is there any like doubtful concepts that you might want to discuss right now?
One thing, like I am actually in the mid week three right now.
Okay,
So when I was going through that, there was how to frame the research question
right.
and keeping it broad so that further we can break it down into further questions. So I thought when we like how broad should we go? This is something that I've always struggled even with my projects.
Okay, right. Um, So, with respect to that, what happens is the research question that you form in a study, not only ethnographic study or any study in general in research, uh, it is very essential that you think of what do you really want to do. Okay, so sometimes you are really interested to know about some phenomena or maybe some um, a culture or anything like around you. So in that sense, you first need to identify what you're interested in and what do you want to actually explore, right? So once you're through with it, like for example, in the last session that we had taken up of the like the problem solving session that we had taken up, we actually designed a research question. So I'll just share my screen and show you how we went through that,
Okay.
right? Just a second. So you can see the slides, right?
It is still loading.
Okay, okay.
I can see it now.
Yeah, you can see them. Okay. So in the first problem solving session, we had actually gone through a lot of concepts, like the very basic understanding of ethnography, right? So that was basically covered in week 1. So we are going like week wise, right? So majorly I had discussed some part of most of the part of week 3 in the last session. Okay. So in that, where you talk about the building a research question, or what a research question is. So here I'll show you what we had um, discussed. So now when we talk about a research, right? So first thing is, what I said is that you need to identify your research interest. So if you, like, for example, you are into finding that how do a certain community uh, works, or do their day-to-day tasks. Like, for example, you might be interested in just going and looking into a remote area in the country where they are involved in a process of making idols out of clay. So idols means those um, god idols, right?
Yeah.
So we had talked about this example in the last session, therefore I'm building it up here again, because that makes, the base the base of what
Okay.
is happening, right? So in that, we just thought, because what happens is, you know what to do in a research. You are through with the processes that you might want to undertake, and you actually have to go through while you're doing a research. But it is sometimes difficult to actually think and consider what particularly you want to know, right? So what happens is, sometimes the broad thing that comes to your mind is the interest area. Like, you really want to know about how this particular community of clay workers, or maybe um, some sort of artisans, actually work, right? In that sense, you're interested to know that, but then you're trying to think about what do you really want to know, because you cannot just go about and talking to artisans and workers and talk about everything, of every aspect of their life, right?
Yeah.
That would be a very huge thing to cater to.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you've had a research background before, so have you ever done a research before?
Yeah, I have worked on projects.
Okay, so in that sense, then you have quite some idea about how do we conduct a research, right? So the very particular thing that we talk about is the research question. That is generally the most precise thing that we state, right? In a
Yeah.
research, you have to be very clear about it. So in that sense, there are two ways of going towards a research question. First, that you have the interest area, you know what you really want to do. Because that topic maybe excites you a lot, or maybe you are just very keen to understand it, or maybe explore it. So in that sense, there are two ways of going about it. One is that you have a very broad, this is the second point, that you have a broad area to begin with, but then you move towards uh, you know um, fragmenting it down, right? In that sense, what happens is, like, for the example that I've given you, in which you are interested to know about the artisans who are making idols, you really want to know that what is their lifestyle, how do they work, how many hours do they work, what are the peak timings of the year when they work a lot, and what do they do for recreation purposes, or anything like that. So you go to the field, just see what all they're doing in a day, right? You observe, and you maybe just go, sometimes ask questions to them, you sometimes pay a visit to them, and try to get some essence of their lifestyle, right? Then you find out some uh, few topics of, like, a few areas of their lifestyle where you're very interested to know, or you're very interested to go deep into, right? In that sense, like, for example, again, if you are doing research, ethnographic research with the clay artisans. What do you really want to know about? Like, give me like one, two things that you'd want to know.
Um, Maybe their workspace.
Okay.
And another thing could be how do they pass on the techniques to their like further generations or next set of artisans.
Right, amazing. So these two things you are very interested to know about, and what happens is that when you go next to them, you are majorly concerned about what their workspace looks like. How do they work in that space? Have they customized the space with respect to their needs, or it has been the same since generations? Another thing is, they might you might want to understand about how they pass on the legacy, and what are the practices that they follow. So the other thing that you might be interested is that can further be broken down into more fragments. So you can maybe just think about how you may just ask them like how um, the great grandparents or grandparents of the generation that you are actually interviewing have taken up that skill. So in that sense, they'll be telling you like everything about it. Then you again might want to be particularly very interested about some aspects in which might include that the parents decide that at certain this level of age, I'd want my kid to learn the skill now. So it may be like the age of 10, it may be like the age of 14, and anything. So then you might be interested that why do they consider that specific age for learning the skill, or why not a lower age, why not a higher age? So in that sense, there are various questions that you can take up and you can answer through your research, but that basically depends on what all aspects you can comfortably cover within a time frame. So generally what happens is, we are in a research, we are generally bound with some time limit. That can be either because of maybe your course, that can be because of your project, that can be majorly because of the funds that you've received. So in that sense, you have to just think about all of these factors, the practical factors as well, the logistics as well, and then think of how you can answer these questions. So with that, you come from that broad beginning to a narrower end, right? So that
Right.
is how things happen and generally how things evolve.
Okay.
Yeah, apart from that, okay, I'll just show you the question that we have built also, so that you can see. So I had given this scenario to uh, to the person I was interacting with in the last session. So I just asked them that again. This maybe for example, I gave them a very specific example, because sometimes like this example that I gave you of a certain art an artisan community in general looks like a bit very broad. So in that sense, I gave them a bit specific scenario where
Okay.
I asked them to maybe just imagine a scenario where they're driving down a lane and they have they just saw some women making the idols of Lord Ganesha with mud. So this is because you might just relate with this scenario a lot. So in that sense, you then are very excited to know that how the legacy works, or and then you started communicating with them. So these research questions, that how sustainable this practice of idol making idols is, and what factors of motivation drive the women to make idols every day, this was given by the person itself. It isn't developed by me. So once you get a lot of scenarios in general, or maybe you just you know see something around you, you have to first articulate it well. So what happens when you are, like for example, interested in this scenario, you are not sure how to put this into words. Sometimes what happens is, like for example, initially I was taking my context, I was very interested to know about how children learn, right? But then there are various aspects to it. You have to be very focused on what aspect of learning you are actually trying to uncover, or you're trying to research about, or you're trying to explore. So in that sense, then I tried to find out that, oh, I'm majorly interested into the mathematical learning part. Then I'm majorly interested into, the algebra learning part. So it's like you're moving from a very broad thing to a very particular concept, so as to make the research much more, you know, effective, because you're focusing on one thing, and the other thing is that you can answer that research question in real life. So what happens is, sometimes people take up very broad research questions and they're unable to answer them in their research, because you have to cover everything that your research question asks in your research, basically.
Right.
So that happens. And Yeah, apart from that, in ethnography, very specifically, research questions are tend to be much broader, right? So in various other types or methods of research, you might find some very specific research questions. Like, for example, somebody might be working uh, like they might be interested to work into finding, like, uh, what do a certain very specific community in Maharashtra, and then further in, like, say, Nagpur, um, does for their, um for earning their livelihood. And then they might be just very interested to know how do they, how much do they earn from it. So that can be just very limited, that can be a very limited context in which you're interested in, right? So that is one thing. But if you're doing an ethnographic research, it is generally assumed that you take up a bit of broader research objective in mind initially, because you really do not have much idea when you do not go to the field, right? When you go to the field, you find a lot of aspects that you might want to cover, or you might want to know more about. So in that sense, you majorly go about finding more and more about a certain topic later in the research, but beforehand you have a broader research question. So
Okay.
yeah, that happens. And yeah, um, apart from that, do you want to ask anything else?
I don't think any other question.
Okay, so um, since you are going through week 3, would you want me to go through week 3 in general, so that I can give you the a sense of what is going on in week 3, or would you want me to give you just a week 4 as well? That
Uh,
totally depends on you.
if week 4 is also possible, we can go with that as
Okay, right. Cool,
well. Thank
that
you.
works well. I'll give you the, slight highlights of what you're going to face in week 4 then. Once you're done with week 3.
Yeah.
So till the research question, it's all good, right?
Yeah.
If you want to ask anything in between, just stop me. Do not wait to ask your questions like anytime, right?
Okay.
So yeah. So majorly after the research question, we had discussed a few more things. Um, yeah. So when we talk about ethnography, we were majorly concerned of how we see it as a research method, or basically what is different in ethnography when it comes to be, looked upon as a research method. So I had asked in the last problem solving session that, can the person state some possible areas where they think the ethnography will be a good research method to begin with. So in that sense, I had given one scenario again, in which I asked them to maybe um, think of a possibility where they'd actually want to conduct an ethnographic research. Then they gave me an example where they'd want to know about how children, or maybe kids in a slum area have a pattern in which they, drop out of schools at a certain age. So
Okay.
there they talked about these two things which they'd be majorly interested about, right? So you can go through the detailed discussion if you want in the of the last problem solving session. If you want to know like
Yeah.
what all we discussed these things a bit like a lot in detail. So that
Okay.
happened, and
I
then
will.
you might just skip to this part and see what all we discussed,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Apart from that, so there are certain things that you need to keep in mind when you think of why would you want to choose ethnography as a research method at all. So because there are, when it comes to your mind, what do you want to research about? There are various methods you can go about. So it's not that, like for example, if you want to know, like the example that I had given you, where you would want to know about the particular community of the artisans, it's not that ethnography is the only way that you can go about doing a research in that area. So there can be many other ways, and there is no like no correct or no wrong way of going about any problem. So that is particularly dependent on how you position yourself or how you see the world. So and how and also it also depends on how you would like to put things into your research. You might want to describe a lot in your research, or you might just want to, state some certain phenomena, or maybe certain characteristics of that community. So that is a very different thing how you go about doing a research. So in choosing ethnography as a research, if you're thinking about it in the first place, if you have a research question in mind or maybe a research problem in mind, and then you think that that ethnography might be a good choice here, then you have to just focus on these aspects. So first is that if you think that your research problem tries to understand how people see their world or a certain phenomena, then you might actually want to do an ethnographic research. So basically, why we talk about ethnography in perception is because knowing about a person's perception requires you to have have very deep conversations with that person, right? You cannot just talk to a person for a day or two and then decide that what do they perceive about life, or maybe about certain aspect or topic in general. You have to spend a considerable amount of time with that person in order to know how they perceive the world, right? Or maybe any topic in general. So after that only you'll be able to justify that the perception you have understood about of that person is actually uh, that perception. So majorly it's like validating your research. So again, that is one thing. Apart from that, if you're actually interested to investigate about relationships, like if you even want to study how um, a certain community interacts with another certain community, even then you can use an ethnographic research, because relationships are again very complex phenomena. uh, you cannot again understand a relationship or maybe describe a relationship only if you have spent very little time in the field. You have to be there observing every aspect of a certain relationship to describe how that goes. So like for example, if you see that maybe in a certain area of a region of the country in India, basically, if you'd want to see how the upper caste people have a relationship with the lower caste people in today's scenario, not talking about the history, then you have to like spend considerable amount of time with the upper caste people and with the lower caste people in different contexts, and again all together, where you might find a a community that includes both. So and while are trying to understand about relationships, you have to have like a lot of time and effort. You have to generate a lot of effort to actually see that how things go. So basically relationships are very complex, so you have to try to find out about every node, not that and every connection obviously. So this is where connections and nodes are basically perceptions. You can say that relationships are connections between them. Maybe you can see that in that sense, or maybe you can generate your own lens. Apart from that, to study human social activity, human social activity, which we had called, if you remember in week one, we have this concept of imponderabilia. um,
Yeah.
in that sense, it talks about spending time in the field such that you get to know about every aspect of the daily routine, right? You get to know how do they work, how do they sleep, how do they eat, what do they wear to work, or maybe in general when they are at home, how do they communicate with other people, that can depend on maybe their own family, that can depend outside the family, with their friends. What transport modes of transportation do they use, or anything like that. To If you are really interested basically to get into the minute details of such human activities, then ethnography is for you. And this majorly includes all of those, examples that have been given in lessons in those lectures that talk about, trying to know about a certain community and spending time with them. So that is all done so that we get to know about a certain community which has not been properly addressed before, and you actually want to know and put their perspective into the mainstream. So that
Yeah.
happens when you try to study human social activity. um, Again, and then you finally want to explore about the identity. Now identity is something that differs with respect to everybody. So what happens is, my identity is different when I tell about my identity. It will be different when my family tells about my identity. It will be different when my friends will tell about my identity. And it will be different when you will tell about my identity. So, in that sense, identity is again very complex. So, if you see all of these aspects where we are trying to, tell that ethnography might help, all of these concepts are very difficult and, complex sociological concepts, or maybe psychological. So, that can depend on how you see it. But all of these being very complex requires a lot of engagement in the field and engagement with the participants, right? So, this concept of identity again being very complex and very subjective with respect to different people that you might be interviewing or observing. This plays a very important role that ethnography does as a research method. So majorly, if your research question um, falls into any of these categories, or maybe if it doesn't, then you just think that if these four aspects are somewhat there in your research question, then you might think of considering ethnography as a viable and a feasible research method, and also like an effective one.
Got.
Apart from that, one thing is existing knowledge that we'll be talking about this later in further subsequent videos, weeks as well. So, existing knowledge, when we see it, uh, is something that is already present. So, basically, when we talk about secondary research, when we talk about reading about a certain topic before going to the field. We are exploring and exploiting the existing knowledge. uh, there are various uh, ways in which you can find out about a certain about your research question. uh, you can do a maybe literature review, you can do a document analysis, or maybe do some you know what we call artifacts analysis or something like that. All of these things include a certain knowledge base that has been there before, that may be contributed by other researchers obviously, but that you are not having your own contribution to, right? You're just reading through them, going through them, so that you get to know about the field before you actually go to the field, right? Also, this is really important because of a few reasons. Okay, I thought there was something in the meeting, right? Yeah, this is important because of a few reasons. This is basically first because ethnography is considered to be a very invasive form of research, where you're actually invading into a person's context. You're invading into their um, personal spaces, to be very specific. So therefore it becomes important that you read about those people at least before you go to the field. If you
Okay.
would go to the field without any prior knowledge, or without reading about their ways of living, or without having some knowledge base about them, you might end up into a situation where you might not be able to get answers of to your questions. So what happens is, the existing knowledge that we talk about, or maybe the resources that are already there, they help us learn from the experiences of other researchers. It's majorly that the other researchers will tell you that there is this certain way in which this society functions, or in which this community functions. So you have to take certain precautionary measures before you just go about talking or asking questions to these people. Sometimes, like for example, as you might have gone through the video and found out, there are various case studies, right, in this section, in
Yeah.
this week 3. So uh, like for example, there was this one instance where the professor talked about that, that people are generally in certain communities very skeptical when it comes to talking to, when the researchers ask about talking to women, right? They
Mm.
do not really want the women to be asked direct questions. They would really want that the particular researcher, maybe us, we should might just go to the male members of the community first, understand what they have to say about the topic, and then we might gradually move to the women of the community. So this happens sometimes. Another aspect can be that you might really sometimes ask questions that can be very personal, or maybe sort of very what do we say, difficult to answer when it comes to those participants. So then you might just want to see if how the other researchers have tackled such a situation, right? So that tells you how you go about asking personal questions, or maybe some problematic questions, or maybe questions that have some stigma attached to it. So all of that. Apart from that, you can identify what aspects of the subject have already been studied. So it's obviously suggested that the basically what we call as the secondary research is basically concerned that you do not go about doing certain research again, right? You would never want to replicate somebody else's work as your own. So you should be like very aware about what has already happened in the field that you are actually trying to address. Then finally it helps us identify new directions to the research. That is where you, if you know that this much work has been done in this area, these many aspects have been covered, then you know which aspect has not been covered, and then you are majorly concerned about that. Then all of these again helps you refine your research question. If you remember how we go about refining the research question, right? So all of these things tell you that since all of this work has already been done, then you have to narrow down to this aspect of the research question, which is yet to be explored. Then these studies, so basically these offer you, obviously they offer you insights and raises new questions, because what generally, while you will be reading the researches and you'll be reading ethnographies, if you are reading actually, then you'll find that majorly the researches end with a certain you know certain future aspects of it. They tell you that I had these particular limitations, so I could not go after this. You can just move, the next researchers can move next, take up these steps and move forward in this direction to do their research. So
Yeah.
then you get a very clear idea that what all is needed after this particular research, and you might just be very interested to maybe go in the same direction and take the next step forward in that. So
Right.
that is one thing. And also how you perceive a certain problem, a research problem, can also be manipulated by these knowledge base texts or readings, which you like. For example, you might be thinking that I'd really want to know about the workspaces of these artisans, but then you might find that some research has already been done on that particular community, which says that the workspaces looks like that it has described you enough about the workspace, but then uh, it says that I could not go into the detail, which says that why have they designed their workspace in such a manner. Then you go about finding about that, right?
Got it.
And finally, these things actually, when you see a research has already been done on something that you're very interested about, you also get ideas of how you can go about finding the answers for your research question. In that sense, sometimes when we are new to a particular domain and want to know about it, um, we might not know what ways we can go through, what methods we can adopt, what tools we can use in our research. So there, these studies or these already done researches will tell you that this is the first is that this is the accepted way of doing this sort of research. They can tell you that, or they can tell you that if you go about this method, you will be able to capture the maximum essence of the field, right? So they can tell you these things as well. So uh, basically, reading is always the best part, because they tell you a lot about the field and about the research area that you're interested in. So like the last time we had talked about the secondary research and literature review come into this. So basically, the course this course actually talks about and tells about that majorly how a literature review is a sort of a existing knowledge phenomena. So it tells you very specifically that it is a comprehensive summary of existing research. So it's basically, the keyword here is comprehensive, because you have to be very sure what areas to focus on in the existing knowledge, right? You might be, so basically when you read a research paper or I read a research paper, we might end up finding out very different things that we might be interested in. So you might be interested in something very different, I might be interested in something very different, but when it comes to doing a literature review, we should both of us should actually come up with the with some sort of similar comprehensive summary of it, right? We should be summarizing the paper in a similar sense, so that we get to know that we have understood what the paper has been trying to say all through, right? So the
Mm.
summary that we create should be somewhat similar, and that literature review gives you. So therefore it's important. uh, yeah. So basically, while we had constructed research questions in the last session, I asked them to form some sub themes of the scenario, so that we can conduct a literature review of the study, of the scenario basically. So what happens is, like for example, in your case that you had said that first thing is you really want to know about the workspace of the artisans. um, in that sense, there are various aspects in which the workspace can be studied. One is that how much time do they spend in the workspace, right? Second can be, um, how do they have, I already told, like how they have designed their workspace so that it becomes easy for them to, and also interesting for them to work in that. Or if they haven't, why did they not think about it? Or is their workspace influenced by the legacy that has been, that they had been carrying uh, in this generation as well? So these are four different aspects where you can conduct a literature review. So these four different aspects will give you four different sort of, papers where you can actually study how a workspace functions.
Got
So these sub themes will help you get an overall view of this aspect. So if you cover all of it, it's commendable. You'll get actually a lot of information of how things go about. And even if you do not touch some spaces, that's fine. That is the scope of your research basically. That also depends on the, feasibility and also the practicality of conducting that research. So that's all right, but majorly every research question will have multiple themes in which you'll be able to find literature. So the next one which you talked about, like maybe the practices that they have been carrying forward through the generations. In that aspect as well, you can have multiple sub themes which you can study through different sort of literatures, like for example, which like I had said that maybe you'd want to understand how, at what age do they ask their children to take up that skill, or maybe teach that skill to them. If the women of the household are involved in that teaching practice or not. If yes, are they performing the skill for the economic purpose, the for earning money, or they are just there to teach the children? So then again, these are again a sort of very different themes you can go into when you're doing a literature review. But again, you have to stop somewhere. You have to understand that which areas you are basically interested in, and then you go about reading more deep, like more and more into it.
Okay.
Finally, then we talk about that it's very important to identify what participants you are going to take up in your research. Basically, a research question is there to tell you who your participants will be. But what happens is sometimes in a research, uh, in different methods, basically, when we say that, we talk about a sample and a population, right? So
Yeah.
in ethnography, it is quite different. When you talk about the sample and the population in general, you are generally talking about that the sample should contain um, some sort of characteristics in which the people, basically people in the sample, should you know adhere to certain rules, right? So that they are
Mm.
eligible to be in your sample. So that happens in a research. But in ethnography, it is very important that you do not keep any such rules. It's very important
Okay.
that you keep a very heterogeneous sample in which you can accommodate a lot of you know perceptions. You can involve a lot of thinking processes. You can involve a lot of different ethnicities, races, genders, and also anything that you can think of, which is obviously relevant to your research question. So that should involve a rich consolidation of different characteristics, right? This is what we say when ethnography is different from other research methods. And again, the participants that you're selecting, it is important to see that this heterogeneity, which is obviously there with respect to demographics, but it should also be heterogeneous with respect to the time. So, like for example, when you're trying to understand about the workspace of these artisans, you should be thinking about how these artisans would go about working during the day, and maybe uh, working during the evening. So that sense, that you'll see, you'll see how the workspace is being utilized in the morning can be very different from what it is in the evening, right? So so there's one example that the professor gives when it comes to variations across time. She says that there's this one place in Ahmedabad, this one gully, um, which when you go to it like in the morning, you'll find that there's a bustling street filled with the vendors and shopkeepers asking you to shop from their outlets, and people are going there shopping for stuff and coming back. So that is one thing. And then in there, because that's a street of vendors and shopkeepers, there's a proper parking lot area, so where people come and park their um, vehicles and go about shopping. But that same place in the evening turns converts into a very different scenario. At the night, you'll find that there's no parking area. All the shops have been shut, and this place is very famous for their eateries, basically
Yeah.
open eateries. So now, these variations across time have to be accommodated and incorporated in your research. So, participants can behave very differently when they are, you know, uh, talked to, or maybe when they're interviewed in different, parts of the day, or maybe different parts of the year. So, that can basically depend on what time you are going to interview them, what time you're going to observe them. But you need to be very sure that you do it in a considerably different amount of considerably different points of time, so that you know that there are variations. And a participant might be responding to your question in a certain way because you are approaching them in that time period. So that is one thing. Yeah, now deciding the tools and methods. uh, when we have understood that we have to do actually ethnography, and we will be doing ethnography to answer a research question, it's very important that we go deep into it and see that uh, what are we going to do in the ethnographic study. So we need to plan everything out, right? So the four things that we should be majorly concerned about while deciding about our tools is that first is that the nature and knowledge that we seek. So, nature of the knowledge means, like for example, when I said that you might be interested in knowing about people's perception about something, then then it will be best that you go and interview them, ask them questions, frame your questions such that you can get the most out of their answers. Like you might be interested to know a lot of things, so you should be designing your questions such that the person is compelled to answer a lot about the same question. Like for example, if you're going and asking the artisans that what are your working hours, so they'll tell you that that we like work from morning 8 to evening 6, then then that stops there. Then you have nothing to talk about, right? Then in that sense, you if you really want to know about the workspace, then you should be asking questions like, um, for example, uh, what if I ask you to go on a leave. So, will you be able to come back and work in the same way, same amount of hours that you have worked all through? So, maybe in that sense, they'll tell you that if they like their work, then if they like, doing doing that work for that number of hours. So all of that, those things you have to keep in mind while you are actually, deciding what tool you'd want to incorporate. In that sense, again, interviews is one thing which you can like talk about perception, but other thing is like when you're talking about human social activity, then it's majorly the observation that you're doing. Obviously, you'll be asking questions in between, but then, if you're majorly concerned about how they go about doing things in the daily routine, then the nature of knowledge is somewhat different. Then you'll be using the observation tool majorly, and you'll be assessing and monitoring the participant in different parts of the day in different activities that they do. So then, what you want to know from the participant will decide what tool you will use, right? So that means by what we call the nature of knowledge. Then, when it says the comfort of our participants, we mean that sometimes uh, people are very, skeptical about being observed all the time. So, if you find out that your participants are getting uncomfortable when you're observing them, you might want to change your way that you're going to be working and finding out answers to your research question. You might then um, change how you observe the participants. So if it feels that being present in the field or maybe in the sight of the participant, it is a discomfort for the participant, then you might just not go about doing the observation and just asking questions about their daily life, right? So that can be done. Again, your own comfort is one thing that you should be thinking about, because um, the feasibility aspect is one major aspect that is there when we talk about ethnography. Ethnography is generally not an easy way to go about doing a research. It's very difficult. It takes up a lot of time. It takes up a lot of effort. So when you think about taking up a certain tool, you should be sure that you are comfortable executing it. So like for example, we talked about maybe just observing somebody. So you are interested that or maybe it's generally suggested that you go about taking a camera so that in the field, so that you get to capture each aspect of the participant, because sometimes you miss a lot of things in between, right? So that helps. Taking photographs and videos helps you to go back and see what you might have missed. So in that sense, if you are not comfortable taking up a lot of equipment with you, you can just go about and make notes in the field and not take up any equipment, right? So that is one thing. And finally, the practical concerns of time, place, and available resources is obviously there, because um, you have to see that if interviewing a certain set of people is feasible or not, if they'll answer you properly or not in that point of time. So like for example, if we talk about you have decided to uh, interview these artisans who have been making Ganesha idols right before the Ganesh Chaturthi festival, then that will be difficult because they might not be able to give you any time at all. They'll be very busy all
Mm.
throughout their day, and will not be able to answer you anything about uh, what they are going through the day, or what it's like about their workplace. So that will be very difficult. So in that sense, you will have to see that, no, maybe I'll just come after they're done with the Ganesh Chaturthi festival, so that everything settles down and they have time to respond and think, and make them comfortable enough. So
Okay.
that is there. So this is again the same thing that we talked. These four concepts of nature of knowledge, comfort of the participants, your own comfort, and practicality. You select your method based on this. So all of these are feasibility factors basically, and yeah, morality factors in general, because it's always how your participants respond to you that manipulates your research. So it should be acceptable and comfortable to the participants. You might, if you have questions that um, might trigger the participants, then you might just want to do away with them, or maybe find ways to ask those sensitive questions. And then whether we'll be able to access the spaces we want to study. So sometimes people think about going to a certain space which is quite remote, but due to your health issues you aren't able to access it for a proper period of time. So like there's one example that Professor Nina gives us, that if you want to do a research on a high altitude, and your health doesn't allow you to do that because you feel shortage of oxygen or maybe air at that altitude, then you cannot spend enough time there. So that you have to see. Also sometimes certain communities do not really welcome you to invade their spaces and just come and ask questions based on in, that might invade their privacy basically. So
Yeah.
they might not at all give you permission to come and conduct a study. Then you have to again think of ways of how, if you really want to go about convincing the participants, and building trust with them, so that you can actually go and talk to them about things like that. But if that is not possible, then you might have to drop it. Then will it be possible to spend time in the areas? Then again, that is there, that.
I had a question related to this.
Mhm.
So sometimes when we pick a very like niche topic, like a community or of workers in a very specific place where like you don't find them somewhere else. So and say there are no research papers or literatures regarding them, but
Okay.
now when we approach them, you find yourself to not find so much information, or they deny you access to places, or deny to answer to some questions. How do you usually go about that situation?
Okay, so this concern of yours has actually been addressed a bit in the week 4, somewhat.
Okay.
So basically, what happens is, it's actually very, nowadays it's very rare to find a topic, or maybe of uh, you know concluding a research question which has a very little background or maybe no background at all. So you might really not want to conduct a research in an area which has like no literature at all, right?
Okay.
It's generally that, I don't know about ethnography, but there are very when you go about, you have a research question in mind, or maybe just a research objective or research problem in mind, you will find a lot of papers in general that will be talking about something that you have already thought about. So you will see that it's very difficult to think of a topic that that will have like zero literature behind. So one
Okay.
thing is that you'll generally find something that will give you um, some knowledge about basically maybe about the certain community or a similar community, if not that same
Okay.
community, right?
Yes.
So that is one thing. But again, if you do not find enough resources which talk about how you should go about asking questions, how you should be interacting with that certain community, then it is suggested that you spend a considerable amount of time with those people. So, like for
Okay.
example, you say that um there is one certain community in, for example, let's take a place in Jharkhand, maybe a tribal community. So many people, and they might not be very welcoming, so they do not allow researchers to come into their space and write about them. So if you're very interested and you think that it is very important to address their issues and concerns, then you have to go to them initially and build your rapport, which you call rapport building. Now that is going to come in week 4, but I'm just giving a gist of it.
Okay.
So what happens is you have to, the first thing that that is there in any research, not just in ethnography, is that you have to make your participants very comfortable with you. You cannot just go to a certain community or maybe anybody in general and tell about you and start asking questions
Yeah.
which are
Yeah.
concerned to your research, right? So when it comes to a community that, again, which is very uh, skeptical about everything and we might not really want to share a lot about them, then you have to just spend a lot of time with them so that you gain their trust, right?
Okay.
uh, before doing that, you cannot go about finding anything about that community, because even if they answer you anything, that might not be true, or maybe that might be manipulated, or that might be some disinterested answer that they're giving, right?
Yeah.
Or that they might be giving you answers in monosyllables. That also happens.
Yes.
So if you're not very um, in sort of a uh, relation with your participants, so that they are comfortable talking to you, it is not suggested that you um, ask them questions or maybe come to the topic that you're researching about. So
Okay.
that there are certain ways in which you can do it. We'll come to that. But
Okay.
this concept of spending time together is therefore um, used in ethnography, so that you can find the very inner details of a community, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. After that, yeah. So it's basically that since you have to find ways in which your participants are comfortable talking to you, it's also you have to find out, these ways in which uh, the feasibility aspect is concerned. Because if you actually do not know the language of that certain community that you're trying to learn about or research about, then you'll have very much difficulty in comprehending what they are saying. Also, it's not just the comprehension part which is required in an ethnographic research. It is going much deeper than the words that are said by the participant.
Mm.
So what happens is sometimes we are not very fluent with the language that your participants will be speaking to you in. So what happens is they might be telling you something about their lives, and or maybe just one aspect of it. But what happens is the translation that occurs in your head, or maybe if you're asking somebody else to translate it to you, you might lose meaning. So
Yeah.
what happens is, like, I had shared this experience in the last problem solving session as well. So uh, uh, we had actually once gone to research in a village in Maharashtra. So what happened is, I do not know Marathi. So I had actually asked people that, can I, like, just talk to you in Hindi? So they all majorly all the people said that yes, they're comfortable talking in Hindi and they'll be able to answer in Hindi. But I could actually see that they are actually translating what they want to see, what they want to say, from Marathi to Hindi. And when you do it in your head, even if you do it, like, for example, if you are not speaking in your mother tongue, like I'm speaking in English and you're speaking in English, there are a lot of things that I am translating from my mother tongue to English, right? And then it
Okay.
loses meaning there. So what we did is, um, I had my friend with me, fortunately enough, who was very fluent in Marathi. So I asked her to converse with all the people I was trying to interview, and then she uh, helped me understand the very essence of what these people wanted to say. So obviously,
Okay.
you'll have to rely on somebody who has a good knowledge about that language, and what every word might mean, what underlying meaning can be understood from their um, you know statements. That has to be there,
Yeah.
right? Uh, yeah, just a second. Okay. Uh, yeah, apart from that, we have the next slide. Yeah. So the, after we're done doing thinking about all of these things, we actually uh, design our study, right? So designing the ethnographic study is the major idea in the week 3 that we are discussing. So the basic thing that we think that once we have tried designing the study and we see that whatever we have thought of is there in the study, we run a pilot. So pilot testing, that we call it in every other field, in every field we call it, is the trial that we do before actually conducting the study, right? So it is very important that you um, do the pilot of the pilot study, so that first thing is, again, which you said, that if you're not very sure that there's enough literature available about a certain community, um, which is again a problem, and because you do not know how to go about interacting with people, then this pilot study will help you a lot. uh, like going to the field and talking and building the rapport is all part of the initial phase of what you do the pilot for. So that is basically you going to the field and testing that whatever you've planned in your research is actually working, right? So sometimes what happens is, you had actually planned that, the example that I gave you, that you'll go to a certain community and ask their women about something, uh, in the first place, but then you find out that the male members of the community are not very comfortable about it. That you'll only get to know once you're in the field, and then this pilot study will help you see that if these male members will actually let you talk to the female members of the community or not. Or what happens is, sometimes we frame questions in such a manner that we think are appropriate, but it might not be for that set of participants that you're going to. So um, for example, that if you're talking about sensitive topics like menstrual hygiene, sexual health, or anything like that, then you cannot just go about asking questions directly, uh,
Mm.
Like for example, you go to a community and ask their women that what precautions do you take while you're menstruating. uh, in that sense, it'll be very difficult for them to answer, or they might not be very comfortable sharing about that with you, even if you have spent a lot of time with them. So
Yeah.
then you might just go about asking that question in some other way, so that they feel comfortable talking about it, right? Then yeah, so yeah, these social and physical conditions of the field will be known once you're in the field. Otherwise it cannot be. So one aspect that we talk about in the pilot is that even if you have read a lot about the context that you're going into, you have read a lot about the people that you're trying to interact with, but there are the reality in which you're trying to go, or the context that you're into might be very different from what you have read, or you might find out or you might find about newer things in the field than that you might have anticipated before coming to the field. So in that aspect, this social conditions, or maybe how people would like to talk about a certain topic will help you in the social context, while in the physical context, sometimes this again, think that you thought that at certain altitude you'll be able to function well, but then you find out that your health conditions aren't letting you do that. So that physical condition is there, and it'll tell you that the pilot will help you to see that you aren't able to spend maybe a certain number of hours in the field, but you might can reduce them. So if you're not being able to spend like 8 hours there in the field, then you might just go about spending 4 hours, if that can be done. So yeah, then finally, while you are in the field, you will get the sense that what places and locations will be the best to talk about something with the participants. So sometimes what happens is, when there are a lot of people sitting together, the women might not be able to talk about their menstrual health or their ideas or what do they do. So they might not be very comfortable talking about that in front of men. So you might go to their spaces, maybe kitchens, or where they're working, their fields, their workspaces, and then talk about it. So only when you're in the field you'll get to know about it. So the pilot helps you do that. Finally, this ethics part is also going to come in the week 4, which says that since you are doing something very invasive, that is going to the field, going to a person's personal space, and then trying to find out answers to your questions, it's important that you follow certain ethics. So it is of utmost importance that you let the participants know why you are there. So, and that should be truthful. So basically, they are asking you to um, take consent from your participants that you'll be spending time with them, you'll be noting down what you're observing, and then using it for your own good, basically, that we call your publication at the end. So that they should be comfortable with. It should not be the case that you are maybe hiding some aspects of your study from the participants, right? And also these participants should be okay with giving you the consent. If they at any point in the study they feel like they would not be able to give you more permission about recording something, or maybe noting down something, or maybe make observations about something, then they can and they should be able to do it, and they should be given full authority to say that no, I don't want to continue with your research now, right?
Yeah.
So that, and yeah, if they actually do not want to be named in your writings and presentations, or they actually want their identity to be hidden, then it's generally preferred, whenever we go to field, we actually ask people that, if what if we use your photographs. Generally people say that no, we do not uh, would want to be, you know, displayed like in a whole in your research. We do want you to anonymize us. So what you do is, when you're using visual representations, you put a maybe a black uh, you know box on their eye, so that people do not recognize them, and also change names, give them pseudonames, for example. So these are the basic things that we do, and these were questions related to week 3, but let's just skip these. These are 3 questions. You can actually access them from the last problem solving session. So that can work. Now in yeah, that was all about week 3.
Okay.
Now in week 4, the major thing that we talk about here is basically these ethics part. Uh, how do you go about, you know, gaining access? How you go about making the participant feel comfortable with you? How you go about immersing yourself into the field? So all of these things are basically addressed in this week 4. So it starts off with uh, the gaining access part. So uh, what happens is, when again, when we are talking about, you know, getting your participants be comfortable with you, they should be able to talk to you in a way that they they feel they are not judged about, right? So first thing that the ethics is concerned about was the permission and consent that we see. But now what the access of gaining access to a certain context, or maybe a certain uh, personal space of your participants, means that the permission that they give you, or the consent that they give you, um, should be uh, with respect to all the time. So basically, you'll be spending some amount of time in the field that will range from maybe going in the morning to coming back in the evening, or maybe staying there for a few months, right? So in that sense, this permission and this consent uh, should be with the fact should be with respect to time. It should You should be accessing the place in limitation to the time that they have allowed you to, right? uh, and finally, observing the context is that sometimes people just want you to stay there for certain observations and not everything. So like for example, there's one example that in week 3 that the professor gives you, is that there's a newly married couple in maybe a certain community which belongs to the higher caste, apparently. And they like when they were approached by the researcher, they were very comfortable telling about everything that they would do in their daily lives and things like that. But when it comes to eating with the researcher, dining with the researcher, they were a bit uncomfortable, because they, in their community, it was prevalent that it is important to know the caste of the person they are eating with, right? They would not be able to eat with somebody who belongs to a lower caste.
Okay.
So in that context, in that sense, observing the context is also sometimes limited to what you say in ethnographic research. So yeah, and this access should be accepted by the participants such that they're comfortable talking to you and you being around them, because you are there, spending a lot of time with them. and also they feel like that they're comfortable sharing their thoughts with you. um, and also, um, what happens is there's another aspect. When you are actually approaching your participants, you know go about telling about everything about you. So majorly you'll go there, introduce yourself first, and then tell everything about the study that you're going to conduct. But then the participant will always have this question in mind, that how will they be benefited by letting you in their context, right? um, like the Professor Nina says that, for example, if you just relate it with yourself, you'll see that you won't just allow anybody coming to your house and asking you to stay you know stay with you for maybe some hours of the day. Why would you do that? So you have to be very contextual in that matter, that you're able to explain that why um, you are there and how it will benefit the participants as well, when you conclude your study. So even if you are unable to express how they will benefit, because it's rare that a participant will benefit from your study, uh, but you should be able to um, articulate it well, and tell them properly and with clarity that once you're done with your research and with your study, the research is going to help the society, like in general, or contribute to the knowledge base in that sense. So then those claims and those reasons for which you're there should be um, convincing enough for the participants to allow you access to their personal spaces, right? But obviously this takes a lot of time, because nobody is going to let a stranger come to their personal space and observe a lot of things, ask questions, because everybody's time and space is very precious. Why would they let you invade that? So the challenges to the access are majorly in these three aspects. First is the social, cultural, and economic differences. So what generally happens is that uh, while you go about asking your participants that you'd want to be there, they'd first they'd first judge you. So it's the normal human behavior, which says that they'll actually look at you, see if you look like a reliable person or not, if whatever you're saying looks authentic or not. All of that happens. So it should be it's of that sense that the social, cultural, and economic differences that they assume or presume about you do not come into your study, or they do not produce hindrance. So what generally happens, like sometimes the economic condition of the researcher is much better than the participants that they are interviewing. So then they will obviously differentiate you as a different person. The concept of other, if you remember from the week one, says that the participants might uh, see the researcher as the other entity, while the researcher too will also see the participants as others, right? So which they cannot really relate to, but would want to study, right? So in that aspect, the social situation of the researcher is very different. The cultural situation might be very different, because like for example, the different communities that we are talking about in all these weeks, uh, Professor Nina doesn't belong to these cultures. She is quite different, and of very different economic strata, for that matter, when it comes to you know in comparison with her participants. So she has to be very uh, what do we say, very focused and also sensitive of how she handles all of this. She has to let the participant forget about all these social, cultural, and economic differences when she is talking to her participants, so that they are comfortable working with her, they are comfortable answering her questions, and obviously, generate information that we want. So uh, and differences in beliefs, values, and identity. So even if you're belonging to that social construct in which your participants belong to, you might have very different values and beliefs. And also, identity, as we discussed, is very subjective everywhere. So the beliefs and values that you might hold will be very different from your participants. But again, how you address these beliefs, these differences of beliefs and values, is will eventually help you in your ethnographic research. And the mistrust of the researcher is the first thing that you'd actually try to remove. You would not want your participants to be detached from you, right? You'd want them to trust you as a person, so that they can give you, authentic information, or maybe just talk their hearts out. So that is what is the major three aspects that you have to keep in mind before. Uh, and also, you have to find out ways how to do away with these things before you go to the field. And what happens when the participants are not comfortable? So once you're through these three topics, and we have addressed all these three issues, you have to see that why would you even have to address these issues, what is the problem. Even if the participants are not very open with you, they're answering your questions, they're answering your research questions, then it's fine. No, it doesn't happen like that. So basically, what happens when the participants are not comfortable, there is hesitation and unease to the participants. So when there is hesitation and unease, that leads that they might be either resentful and may feel overwhelmed by your presence. So why what happens when somebody just comes to your house and says that they'd want to spend time with you, with your context, observe you all throughout the day? How would you feel? That would be very, you'll be very resentful, because you'd not want anybody else to just come and see how you are functioning in the whole day for their purpose, right? So they may also second guess their answers and give you responses to impress the researcher. So what happens is, sometimes being you know ethnographers or maybe researchers, sometimes people are very impressed that, oh wow, you're doing something very different and we haven't heard of this before. And they might consider you as a certain philosopher or somebody belonging to that elite knowledgeable group, and then they might just think that you're there to evaluate them, right? So in that
Yeah.
sense, they'll think a lot before they'll answer anything. So it's very important that you make them feel that there's nothing different about you and them. You are there just to know, learn about them, and you're eager to know about them. So that will help you to make them comfortable with you, and then they'll be sort of truthful to you in some sense whenever they talk about something. And then sometimes what happens is, since it's a long day and you've been asking some questions to them all throughout the day, they might feel frustration and just think that, when are these questions going to stop anyway? So in that sense, they might just sometimes, whenever you say something, they might just agree and would not say anything in negation of that fact that you're saying. So just because they do not want to answer anymore, they're like, they might be like, I just would want to agree with you because I really do not want to answer that. Why do I disagree, right? So that happens sometimes. uh, in that sense, if any of these things happen, then your research is basically affected, because you're not actually reporting the truth, or you're not actually going deep into the you know the realities that we call, that you might have seen in the week one. So what the researcher can do now to do away with all of this? So what can they do now? They have to be careful about how they respond to their opinions, ideas, and beliefs. So like for example, uh, your participants tell you something about them, right? They say that I believe into, like for example, you're an atheist. Let's take an example. You're an atheist, and you go about interviewing the idol makers, the Lord Ganesha idol makers. So what you do is you go and ask them questions that why do you even make idols of Lord Ganesha? Then they might just say that we think that this is a very noble profession, because we get to carve out our own god. So then you might be of this then you might just go about asking that why do you even believe in god, or maybe in Lord Ganesha's powers or something like that. And then they might just say that they might just put about some uh, claims that Lord Ganesha had done this to them. They feel that it was Lord Ganesha who had been in their misery or something like that. And then you go about that there can be some other aspect as well. It might not be just Lord Ganesha. So that might feel a bit, overwhelming to them. It might just feel that you're countering them at every answer. So you have to be very careful how you address their whenever they just you know talk about what they think, how they think, or maybe just tell what they feel about a certain topic. So or what their religious or maybe other social beliefs are. So in that sense, you have to be first very sensitive and careful how would you respond to them. Then you have to be conscious that how would you present your opinions, beliefs, and ideas, right? So like just I said, if you're an atheist and you'd say that no, I don't believe in Lord Ganesha, and then I just think that there might be other factors that might have helped you in your misery, and it might not be Lord Ganesha, right? Then you are actually in this scenario, you're actually trying to manipulate what your participants are thinking. So you do not do that. You have to be very again sensitive how you respond to their opinions and beliefs. So if you are actually sometimes what happens is when you're into the field and you've been talking a lot with the participants, you become quite informal. So you just maybe you might just start discussing about a political aspect. So in that sense, you just if you do not agree with their political stance, you might just talk about why do you think your stance is correct. So in that sense, you have to see that you're there to understand about their beliefs, their perspectives, and then you should be more interested into finding out why do they have that certain belief or perspective, right? So you have to be, if you want to present your perspective and beliefs, and you are actually into that informal mode, then it's better that you actually see how you do that, right? You have to be conscious about that again. And do not like that will be very basic to say, but you should not be lying to them about anything, just that you believe that it'll end up in an agreeable engagement, right? So sometimes what happens is when we say that the research should be conscious about what they say, so what happens is they agree with the participant about every aspect. But then if you always agree about something and you lie about your own perceptions or maybe your own beliefs, then what happens is that you lose about certain other things. You, if you might just counter them with certain examples, or ask them about something different, then you might just not So if you, yeah, obviously, so basically if you counter them, then you might just gather more information of why do they not think uh, in your way, and
Yeah.
why do you have different counter opinions. So you shouldn't just agree with whatever they say, and obviously give them room to express themselves. So it should not be that it's just you who are asking questions and you're giving them less time to respond to your questions. You're there to listen to them, so you have to listen to them and understand everything that that their beliefs might come from. So sometimes what happens, their beliefs might be very alien to you. So when we talk about not letting women talk directly to you, you might be feeling that in your community it's very normal that women address their own issues, they talk about their own problems, but how is it that this community isn't allowing women to do that? So in that sense you have to know that these traditions or maybe these social beliefs are coming from a certain idea, or maybe they're coming from certain point in history. So you have to be conscious about that, you have to be sensitive about that. So that you can do when as a researcher. Now when we say that the researcher is there in the field, like you are there in the field, you basically somebody foreign that has has come to to their personal space to invade it, or maybe just study about it. But then this perception about the researcher is generally about first, basically how you judge a person when you first meet them. It's how do they appear, their gender, their age, their how they dress, how they speak, in that sense. So the participant's perception is about the researcher is first of all the very basic, that basically judges how the researcher looks like, how they talk, and what are they talking about. So in that sense, it's very different how they might talk to you and your friend. So like for example, Nina, Professor Nina gives this instance in the videos that she talks about. Um she says that there was one researcher who belonged to Israel. So basically, she was an Israeli citizen, and she had gone to learn about the Palestinian community, right? So what happened is, when she went to the field, the Palestinian people told her a lot about how um the wars affect them, how their rights have been, uh, violated and things like that, and what all they've been going through because of all the bombings that has been happening in the place. So they've talked about their plight a lot. But when the Palestinian researchers went to the Palestinian participants, they heard a completely different story. So the Palestinians, when talking to Palestinian researchers, mainly talked about how they are preserving their own culture, how they are going about, teaching about their culture to their younger ones, and how they are, working to preserve their culture, basically. So basically, these things. um differ when they talk to different set of researchers, right? So the
Yeah.
Israeli researcher was a completely different has like the Israeli researcher has a completely different uh, story to tell of the same community, while the Palestinian researchers have a very different story to tell about the same community. So this, when you are identified as a person by through your participants, they decide what to reveal to you and what not to reveal to you, right? So this is where it comes from. So basically, the rationale that the Palestinian artisans might have had while talking to Israeli researcher might be uh, majorly because they think that if we tell about our plight to the Israeli researcher, we might just have our voices heard in Israel as well. So the Israelis will know how much it affects us when they bomb the, you know, Palestinian regions. While in Palestinians, it's not, relevant for the Palestinian researchers to know about that, because they think that they might have already known about that, those things, and they can, you know, relate with the Palestinian researchers more. So they talk about deeper things like preserving the culture and things like that. So there's very different. There's so much difference when the researcher is of a certain type in the community that they're trying to study, right? So it's generally suggested that you, leave a certain identity of yours behind and try to indulge into the field so that you get to understand about your participants much better. uh, yeah, the implications of all of this is that of all of this basically, of the researcher's identity in the eyes of the participant is that the same topic may reveal different things to different researchers because of who they are, right? Which we have seen in the Israeli and Palestinian researchers. uh, Again, like for example, if I might go to a certain set of participants and talk about you know something, they might tell me something very different, and if you go to them, you might come back with some very different observations and information, right? So this basically depends on you as as an identity in the eyes of your participants. So when we were talking about, right, in the existing knowledge, uh, we talked about, you know, learning from the uh, uh, experience of other researchers, right? So in that sense, every researcher that goes to do an ethnographic research in a particular setting will come back with different observations. So therefore, there is, you know, somewhat very little possibility that there is, like, you know, all the information that is needed or that is present in the texts of about a certain community or about a certain set of people, right? So ethnography conducted by different researchers turn out to be very different. Right. So, yeah, this also pushes us to consider that how we may access different aspects of our participants' lives and various phenomena in their worlds. So, now again, the Israeli researcher would not know about how the Palestinians, preserve their culture, and the Palestinians would not know about the, what all they go through while they are undergoing wars. So these things are actually hidden from these two different sort of researchers, right? But it's the job of the researcher to go about finding the very minute details about their participants. So they have to access the very uh, basic or very different details of their participants. So in order to do that, uh, there's this concept called triangulation. So have you like heard about this concept before?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so triangulation talks about that you have maybe you're in the field, right? And you have a certain set of participants talk about a certain topic. Like say for example, uh, you have a set of older women in a community talk about their menstrual hygiene and the ways they, handle their menstrual hygiene. So but what happens is that you are there. You've talked to the older women there, but then it's not that you just stay with what the older women have told you about that. You go about talking to the men of the community as well. So if they are comfortable talking about it, you might just also say that how have you seen your wives or maybe mothers practicing menstrual hygiene. So you ask the same information from a different set of people. Then again, you might go about talking to the younger women, that how have you seen your you know mothers practicing menstrual hygiene, and how is that different from yours. So in all these cases, you're actually trying to capture information about the same thing but from different sources. So this process is called triangulation, where you're actually not relying on just one aspect or one way of one way of collecting information, but on several other ways, so that you're sure that you're covering the major perceptions or major aspects of the same phenomena. Okay, so in that sense, it is feasible, and it should be feasible to do so, and it is important to do triangulation. But how do we go about it? So basically, there are a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different aspects that one might consider. How can we consider every single of it? So then we can do this by forming a team. So first thing that can help us do this is that we might just make up a team of researchers, and not just stay like a one man army. So what we do is, because since we have seen that the identity of the researcher is of a lot of importance when it comes to how participants respond to it. So multiple identities of the researcher is needed, right? So that if somebody, if your participants aren't telling something about themselves to you, they might tell something about themselves to me, right? Based on the identity that they hold about me. So that helps us to get different aspects of the same community in a single study, right? This is helpful because in one go you're able to get a lot of perspectives together, right? So this is where forming a team helps. And also, some researcher may access some participants based on the thing they share in common. So what happens is, since you might be a very different person in the eyes of your participants. You might belong to a very different social context, you might belong to a very different community, you might belong to a very different economic section. So in that sense, it is very suggested that you should be taking somebody in your team who is somewhat relevant to your participants. They might be somebody they can relate to. So for that, because we are generally more comfortable talking to somebody who is from our own social context, cultural context, or who might share the same beliefs that we might have. So when we talk to somebody we have something in common with, we tend to express more of what we feel. So, in that sense, forming a team and having somebody from that community maybe for in your team helps a lot, so that you get the minutest details from the participants. So, we call these people, which can help you in finding a lot about your participants, as key participants. So, this concept is there of key participants because the same thing that I have told you, that it is very comfortable when we talk to somebody who belongs to the same social structure like ours, who belongs to the same community like ours. So we relate to each other much better. So in that sense, the key participants are people from the participant community that you're trying to research about, obviously. But you try to learn from the knowledge of the various participants who occupy different positions in the community. So what happens is, these key participants of yours can be from different sections of the community. So like for example, if you're interested in knowing about the artisan community, you might have key participants like one older member from the artisan family, so that that how the legacy goes forward, right? One older member, one younger member, and one female member as well, if not, if you haven't addressed them. So these key participants will help you gain different experiences and also different perspectives of the same phenomena and same community, right? So um, yeah, and these key participants, who are they? They are somebody similar with the similar in the community you're actually trying to address, and also familiar with the context. So if you're taking somebody from the same community, they'll be very well able to tell you why a person thinks in a certain aspect, right? So like for example, you have a key participant from the community of artisans, and you just saw, like you saw that the people who are making the idols perform a certain type of puja before they start a work. They start their work in the morning, right? So you go about asking the key participants that what is the significance of this puja, why is it performed before before these people start their work. So they'll be able to tell you much better the context, the cultural significance of that puja, of that practice. And also they'll be able to not just tell why they are performing it, but also why many other people of the same community do something like that always, right? So that familiarity with the context actually will help you gain deeper insights without even trying to ask the same thing from the participants, the actual participants, right? So also a member of the community, key participant is a member of the community which is known to them, or they can vouch the researcher, they can vouch for the researcher. So what happens is like this there's this example in the video which says that if some stranger comes to your house and says that I want to know about all of these aspects of your life and things like that, you'll be very skeptical. But for example, your best friend comes to your house and brings somebody, a researcher, into your house and says that they're doing a study um, about a community, and they'd want to know something from you, they'd want to ask some questions, then you'll be okay, because your best friend knows who that researcher is. And you are much clearer about the authenticity of their work because of your best friend approaching you, right? So when somebody from the community is known to you, then they'll be able to help you with the building connection with the participants, building your rapport with the participant, basically getting the participants talk comfortably to you because somebody from their community knows you, right? So that sense of authenticity and that sense of trust stays because of the key participants. And finally, these key participants are those whose word might hold weight. So basically, these people are somewhat majorly influential people of the community. So because what happens is these. If somebody influential from a community says that there is this researcher who'd want to know about us, so you should contribute to their study, then their word is something that holds weight. Then all the people of the community will be um, uh, you know accepting what the key participant is telling them to do, right? So all of this is there. This is the concept of the key participant helps the researcher to actually not become an alien to your participants, but to dwell in much faster and build trust with the participants. So they help in these key participants help in, as we just discussed, understanding the context. So sometimes what happens is we might just be interacting with the participants, and then they like say something about their daily routine, right? And then at that point you might be just like noting down everything and not very concerned about why they follow that particular routine. But then while talking with the key participant, you come to know that they follow a particular routine because of a legacy part of that community, right? So like for example, let's take an example in this and understand. So like there is this in a community, you are going and trying to understand, like, let's take the artisan community again, because we are using one example in every aspect. So in that community, you might see that other uh, they are worshipping their tools before they start their work, right? So you're there just observing things, and then you know that obviously these tools are very important in their lives. They are actually their source of livelihood, so therefore they are worshipping it, and there's nothing new in that. They're there, and there's also, that is also common in very different communities as well. So that's not something that you'll be questioning, right? So but then um, the key participant maybe that you're talking to tells you that there are some tools that they are not using in their work, but they're actually worshipping them just because they are actually, respecting the tools that their ancestors might have uh, used in the past. So that thing is the additional insight that they're giving to you, right? uh, Without letting you, realize that you have missed something. So these tiny details only the key participants will be able to tell you. So therefore they're important. Also, accessing participants, obviously, like as I just said, that they help you build trust with the community. So you wouldn't have to worry much about gaining the trust, and then entering inaccessible spaces. Sometimes when you are very just on your own, people might not let you enter into some spaces that they might consider very personal. So there these key participants will help you to gain access to. So because obviously people from their community will not uh, you know protest the key participants entering into those inaccessible spaces. So therefore you eventually have your access to that those spaces as well, right? And finally, in interpreting observations. So sometimes like just I said, you might infer that these people might be just worshipping their tools because they help them in their earning their livelihood. But again, this was just one part of the observation that you had. It had deeper meanings. So these observations will also be, sort of refined through key participants. uh, yeah, and the challenges, but somewhat what sometimes what happens is the key participants that a researcher might identify might not be the best person to be a key participant, right? So sometimes these key participants restrict some part of your study than facilitating them, right? So sometimes what happens is the engagement may be instrumental. So you might have some give and take relationship with the key participant. So they might be benefiting from some part of your study, and you are obviously benefiting from the key participant because they're allowing you to access the participants, go to their spaces to ask questions and all of that. So this might just be just this might just stay as something instrumental and not something which you might gain from. And again, the researchers may gain more than the participant, because obviously what are the participants gaining from your study? Nothing. Like literally nothing. If you have not promise them to like, for example, sometimes what happens is the researchers are trying to understand the plight of a certain community because of a certain government order. uh, in that sense, if you are trying to understand you know that plight, and then you're putting that plight forward in front of the government, and then asking them to take back off from that order, because people are undergoing a lot of pain because of that order. Only in those cases the researchers will be helpful to the participants, right? If we think of it. But obviously there are other aspects as well where the researchers may be uh, uh, helpful to the participants. Like there is one example uh, that people that you'll be going through in the videos, in which the researcher has actually helped uh, the people of the community uh, in in a way that they will you know sort of go through a sort of reform in their community. So they are actually, we'll come to that, the levels of immersion, when we take up in a few slides. So in that sense, they're completely immersing themselves into the cause that they're uh, addressing through their research. So only then the participants are benefited from the research that the researchers are doing. Then finally, the participant has limited access within the context. Sometimes, so this earlier we were saying that the key participants has a lot of access to the context, but now we are saying it might have a limited access within the context, because there's one example that the professor shares in the video is that M.N. Srinivas is a very celebrated ethnographer of India. So he was once going to actually understand or learn about the Dalits of the of the country, of a certain region basically. But what happened? They chose the key participant as a person from the higher caste. So what happened? They were unable to get to the details of the Dalit community, because the key participant was, uncomfortable with the researcher going and interacting with the lower community. So, in that sense, it becomes very difficult for the researcher to actually, do away with the first um, the lag that the key participant will bring between the actual participants and him or her. And obviously then it's a very high, there's a very high chance that your research will get manipulated by the key participant. Their opinions and their views about the community will um, shape, or will play a lot of role into your research. So that is again very wrong to happen. Finally, the participants will have their prejudices. So as I said, that the person belonging, the key participant belong to the upper caste community, did not want the researcher to actually interact directly with the participants from the lower community. Then the prejudice that the key participants have in their mind about the lower community will affect what Mr. M. N. Srinivas would have, put into his research. But then obviously he found out that this is problematic, and then had uh, he did away with the key participant. So that you will have to see when you are selecting key participants. You have to be very considerate about these issues. Finally is clear communication. So basically we were talking about how do we see that we cover all the aspects of uh, the different perceptions, different ideas, or different knowledge from the same community. Then the third part that we can do is through clear communication. This is because when you clearly communicate what your intentions are to the participants, and why you're there, basically rationalizing of presence means that you are very clear about why you are there in their personal space, and you're able to communicate well to your participants. Then this clear communication helps them to build helps the researchers to build trust, right? So this is There are a few more things that we can cover, but let's just stop here because you may just want to go through these slides. Then you
Okay.
can access them from the problem solving session sheet that you have in your you know in the interface that you see while you log in into
Okay.
the course. So this gaining of familiarity, how do you make yourself familiar with your participants and how you make your participants familiar with you is all that we have in it. Then there's the concept of professional researcher, that why and how a researcher has to be professional when they are in the field, and then how do they exhibit this professionalism in the field. And these are some I have also included some important uh, quotes that the professor says in the videos. So if you go through them, you'll see that they are very deep and have much deeper um, you know meanings with respect to how you see ethnography, and uh, going into the field, talking to the participants, and all of this phenomena is a lot more than what we just think of it. It seems basic, but it has much more meaning. Again, how the what do we say? As much it is important for the researcher to understand about its participants, it is also very important for the participants to understand about the researcher. So it is very important that we share about ourselves when we are in the field, right? And again, this concept of immersion is there, which we will, if you want, we'll maybe just start from where we left in the next week's problem solving session, so that
Okay.
you get a clarity of whatever you need, or maybe just want to brush up the concepts once we meet. So we can do it, because immersion is something that I would really want to address, and would not just want you to read it. So immersion, so it has 3 degrees: complete, active, and peripheral. So these things, this is again a very important line from the lesson. And this concept of self reflexivity is something that is very, very important when it comes to ethnographic research. So let's just wind up the session today, because we had been covering some section of week 3, and we had covered a bit of about like half about section of week 4 as well. So while you'll be going through the other lessons of week 3 and the lessons of week 4, if you find any problems with it, if you have any, sometimes what happens is you're actually going through the lessons and or the videos, and then you think that no, this could have been something different. So these problem solving sessions are basically here so that you can communicate what you think about what you've been taught in these videos. So I'm here, I'll be happy to hear whatever you have to share with me with respect to what you've learned uh, in the weeks. So any doubts, any questions, or anything to share or anything to discuss also, we'll be taking up that in the next session with you. And yeah, the same time, Monday, 7 to 9.
Okay. Got it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for coming to the session so that I could have a very interactive session with you, and I could help you with some things or any doubts that you had. So it was great interacting with you, Aparna.
Yeah.
Hope to see you in the next session again.
Yeah. I'll be there for that. Thank you. The examples were really great. It helped me a lot.
Oh yeah, these are there because we've also been learning about ethnography. So
Okay.
these are certain examples that we might just think while we learn something. So ethnography is something which lets you think a lot about stuff. So these
Yeah.
examples have generated from those deeper thoughts that we had while learning about ethnography. So yes, I'm
Yes.
glad they were helpful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aparna. Have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you.